Are we sure we're going to get some breakout seasons from some Sooners? Courtland Guillory commits.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. Josh, spring ball is over. We've talked a lot about guys that we think could have breakout seasons in 2024. But are there some guys that may not have as much of an ascension this season as we previously thought based on transfer additions, the performance of other players that have maybe stepped up in a way that we didn't expect?
Who would be one of the names that you would think in that regard? I think at one point, talking just running back, you would have thought, okay, beginning of the spring, Javonte Barnes is healthy. Here we go. And now as we revisit things, you had the thought that Javonte Barnes was gone, that he was about to enter the transfer portal. So I'm not totally ready to close that book, I guess, but I'm certainly much more leery. And I would start there offensively, guys that thought were going to maybe really impact things for Oklahoma. And oh, by the way, just looking at the spring picture, more of what we've seen from it, love the growth of Hicks. And I really like what we saw from Sam Franklin. We talked a lot about that as one of our spring game takeaways, was that this guy belongs, right? You wonder, somebody of that level jumping up to this level. And based on, if we can only go off the spring game, I think Sam Franklin belongs. So Javonte Barnes, if you had him on your board as right back in the mix to be Oklahoma's number 2 running back alongside Gavin Sawchuk, well, at least for the moment, I think you shelve some of that thought.
Yeah, and I think this is where that competitive depth comes into play. You want camp competitions to kind of redefine what your preconceived notions were about a position group. And I think running back is a perfect example. Obviously, Gavin Sawchuk, he's lived up to all the expectations as Oklahoma's leading rusher from a year ago, now enters the spring as the kind of de facto number 1 running back. And not to say de facto, but he's earned it, and he's earned it through the 2023 season, through the spring ball as well. If he can stay healthy, he'll be Oklahoma's number 1 running back this fall as well. But you're right, the Javonte Barnes thing hasn't really materialized in the way that we thought it might. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you're seeing an emergence from Caleb Hicks and from Sam Franklin. And that's not to say that Javonte Barnes still can't have a big contribution. It's just his absence from the spring game was a little bit curious. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's out of favor with DeMarco Murray and the offensive staff. It just means we don't really know what his role is going to be going into the fall. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means we don't know. And I think that's the case for several players. And, I think one player that might not reach the heights that we kind of expect is maybe a Peyton Bowen. Now, that's not to say he's not going to be a good player, but if we're expecting him to go in and have this All-American type season in year 2, that might be a little bit of a reach and an expectation. That's not to say that he can't go have that kind of a season. He's perfectly capable of doing something similar to what Billy Bowman did a year ago. He's got all the talent in the world, but you're starting to see that, okay, safety is pretty deep. And Robert Spears-Jennings is a guy that's going to be given a lot of snaps this year. We've seen Michael Boganowski, Reggie Powers, Jaden Hardy all get a lot of snaps or all create a lot of buzz in spring ball. Does that mean Peyton Bowen won't play? Obviously not. He's going to play, and he's going to play a lot, because they're going to play a lot of safeties. At least they're going to play 3. But we also know that Woody Washington's been moonlighting at safety a little bit. We know that Kendall Dolby can play some safety for you too. So he might not be a player that has this huge breakout season. He could have a really, really good season, but is he going to go and kind of take the college football world by storm? Not necessarily, I don't think. I do think that he can go and solidify himself as kind of that Billy Bowman replacement going into year 3 into the 2025 season. But I just don't know if I'm at this point where I'm like hedging a little bit on some of these second-year players, because I think the third-year guys are taking those necessary steps to now be significant contributors.
If I could pump the brakes on a couple of transfer additions, 2 names that I would toss into that equation is Spencer Brown, offensive tackle from Michigan State, was not running with the ones, of course, in the spring game, though. I thought, look, he got beat on several occasions. There were a couple of snaps that I thought actually did look like good reps from him. But if we're talking about initially it was Spencer Brown's going to come in here and start, well, right now that's not necessarily the case for Oklahoma. Caden Woolard, another name that if you thought, step right in and impact things for OU, then that doesn't appear to be the case either for Oklahoma. What about on the positive end of the equation as we reassess potential, breakout stars? Deion Burks, if we're talking transfer portal, no duh. Slam dunk, no brainer. Other names that I think we can feel good about are Mason Thomas. Feels like had a big time spring. That feels like it's tracking, John, for a potential breakout. Both of the freshman defensive tackles, if hype was the word, with Jaden Jackson and David Stone, then mission accomplished throughout the spring. Who else comes to mind in terms of tracking as a potential breakout star for Oklahoma relative to maybe what we thought going into the spring and then, now coming out of that?
Well, I think Grayson Halton is another one, another defensive tackle type that we've kind of seen flashes from even at spring a year ago. He dominated the spring game. He had a couple sacks, 5 tackles, if I remember right, and looked really, really good. But I remember talking to Ted Roof in the post game, and he said, hey, for a guy like Grayson Halton, it's just about building and creating consistency. And maybe this is the year where he's kind of put it all together and he's figuring it out and he's ready to take that step. We know that he's upped his size. He's upped his weight. I think 295 was the last reported weight that I heard. And if he's able to keep his explosiveness and his athleticism, then I think that just takes his game to another level, because he's explosive and he's quick and he's agile and he can dart through the offensive line and create havoc in the backfield. So I think that's a guy that is really on track to be a starting defensive tackle for Oklahoma, and not just be a defensive tackle that starts out of necessity because you lost an Isaiah Coe and a Jordan Kelly, but because he's ready to take that step and ascend into a player that's going to contribute every down.
It's fun thinking about these guys that maybe are going to take big time jumps for OU. Speaking of jumps, Oklahoma, no big deal. They continue to make jumps in the recruiting class rankings. And let's dive into another name that you need to add to the set of commits for Oklahoma going forward. Is this staff, John, they just recruit and recruit. But we'll tell you all about one Courtland Guillory coming up next on Locked On Sooners.
The Oklahoma City Thunder got the big sweep, moving on to the second round of the playoffs. TBD right now on Gametime, but you got great opportunities to get in to see the top-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm looking at Gametime right now. Tickets as low as $136. Now, that might seem a little bit pricey, but use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $20 off your first purchase. But, hey, it's going to be the top ticket in town until they get eliminated, if they get eliminated. But go to Gametime. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off. They got the best ticket deals going and great last-minute prices as well. So go check it out. Download the Gametime app. It's available in the App Store, Google Play as well. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off your first purchase. Gametime, last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed at Gametime.
It's playoff time, obviously, in the NBA. Oklahoma City Thunder in full effect for a lot of our listeners and viewers. Everybody's excited about that. The NHL, though, many of you may be Dallas Stars fans in this market. Baseball, of course, back in full swing. And, oh, by the way, FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Speaking of automatic dubs, again, I continue to feel the over on the 7.5 win total for Oklahoma is close to automatic. I will not say the Red River game, even though I love Oklahoma getting 9.5 points in the OU Texas game, is automatic just because, well, it's the OU Texas game, and I refuse to treat anything for the most part in the OU Texas game as totally automatic. But hey, that's with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Locked On Sooners here. Josh Helmer, John Williams. Courtland Guillory commits to the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, every recruiting cycle, I try to find my favorite player in a class, and I think it's this kid. He plays cornerback the way, like a linebacker, in my opinion. A good coverage linebacker because, man, he loves to lay the lumber. He's a 4-star kid. He's a blue-chip prospect with big-time recruiting offers. Out of the Klein Oak area, was heavily recruited by Texas A&M and Texas, and chose the Oklahoma Sooners. And Jay Valai just continues to hit the ball out of the park every recruiting cycle. But I love the way Guillory plays. He's big, he's fast, he's physical. He does a great job playing, quote unquote, in phase, meaning as the ball is in the air and about to get to the catch point, he does a good job that staying in a place that he can attack the ball in the air. He doesn't get himself caught looking, caught grabbing, caught, with his back to the ball and not able to play the ball on time. He does a really nice job of keeping himself in a position that he's easily able to attack the football. And I love the way that he plays it. In run support, the dude is trying to lay the lumber. He's not just trying to bring guys down. He's not shoestring tackling dudes. No, he is hitting like he's a 235-pound linebacker at 6'1" and 185 pounds. Like, this kid, man, he's going to be a fan favorite of Oklahoma fans because anytime SEC schools, I'm looking at you, Jeff Lebby in Mississippi State, try to run that wide receiver screen, Courtland Guillory is going to come up and he's going to pop you. He's going to get you for a couple-yard loss. Yeah,
he's really highly regarded with rivals. They've got him as a blue chipper. And let's see, 24/7 Sports, they have him still as a 3-star on 3. Actually, doesn't have him rated yet, though. I'm sure that will change in quick, short order for one Courtland Guillory. But Rivals loves him. He's a blue chipper there, and I'm sure probably there's a good chance that he's going to finish that way across the board, John, when it's all said and done. Again, I love the size here for somebody in the defensive backfield, north of 6 feet, can really run and cover. And again, the folks that Oklahoma beats out for it, the Texases, the Tennessees of the world on this offer sheet. Texas A&M is right there. TCU, Pittsburgh, Oregon State, Missouri, Kansas, Houston, Georgia Tech, Arizona, UCF. So Arizona State's on that list too. So a nice collection of Power 4 programs here that Oklahoma's won out on. And Jay Valai and company, John, they continue to add legitimate athletes to the defensive backfield. Look, the days of Oklahoma having a 5'10", 5'11" corner, not totally done, but if they can go find the 6'1" and above corner, Oklahoma's found a way to go get those guys committed and ultimately signed, which, a little extra length on the back end, I think is exciting for Oklahoma fans.
Well, it allows them to do a little bit more in zone coverage than what they might be able to do with a 5'10" corner. You add that length, you add that wingspan, it's just going to make those throwing windows a little bit smaller for opposing quarterbacks as they're trying to fit things in the cover 2, cover 3 areas. If Oklahoma, it just gives Oklahoma more flexibility to play those zone coverages that they want to play, but also adding these guys with length, you're going to be able to attack the ball in man coverage a little bit cleaner than you might be if you got a few inches shorter on your arms. You're going to be able to make plays on the football. Football is a game of inches. We've heard it for years, right? And we just got through draft season, and everybody's measuring arm lengths for offensive linemen and hand breadth for quarterbacks. All that stuff, like, there's a science behind it, and there's a reason why they look for cornerbacks that are 6+ that can run and have good athleticism, have good arm length, and same for offensive tackles and defensive ends and everywhere. They want that arm length because it just makes the game a lot easier, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So adding a guy like Guillory, he's going to be one of those kids that if his recruitment was maybe a little bit more open, it seems like maybe more offers would come. But it sounds like, and it feels like it's been Oklahoma for some time. And even after the spring game, like all kinds of predictions came in favoring the Sooners, and it was just a matter of time for Oklahoma. So I love the kid. I think he's going to be my favorite in this cycle. And I know there's a lot of really good players already with like Kevin Sperry, I'm forgetting, Trine Washington, all those Carl Albert kids. It's just a really, really nice group. Kamari Moore is another one of those that I really love in this class. Just kind of flying under the radar, still in that 3-star status, but the dude just plays football, and he plays football the right way and in a very, very productive manner. So it's a really nice looking class right now, and sits number 6 in the 247 team recruiting rankings for 2025. And it'll only continue to grow because they've got big time targets that they're still pursuing.
Yeah, got a long road still to travel in this class, which can be equal parts scary at times. But for the most part, for Oklahoma under Brent Venables and company, it's been, look, once you have a commitment, it's, and all of the rules with all of that with Brent Venables and company. But there hasn't been a lot of defections once guys have been committed for the most part. Knock on wood for all the fans out there. But say that to get to the point of Oklahoma will keep adding to this class. You mentioned number 6 on 24/7 Sports. It's number 4 according to Rivals. So Rivals likes it a little bit better. Remember, Rivals likes Guillory as a blue chipper, and the others are still they're late to catch on, John, with Guillory, but they'll get there. Don't worry about that. The class as a whole defensively is really exciting. You mentioned Kamari Moore. I love Trent Wilson defensively up front as well. So I like each of the 2 defensive linemen a lot. The defensive backfield, how do we feel about just that portion of this class right now? Trine Washington, there's folks that feel like he could play all over. Some people feel like safety. We'll see kind of what his future with Oklahoma looks like. Marcus Wimberly is a safety in this class. You've now got Malik Hawkins to obviously go with Guillory here. So they're off to a nice little jump start just in terms of the defensive backfield in this class.
Yeah, and the Malik Hawkins thing, again, a kid that's going to fly under the radar, and he shouldn't. He's a really, really good football player, and he's going to play football, again, the right way. He's going to attack what it means to be a student athlete and a member of the Oklahoma Sooners, and he's going to only continue to grow. He's got all the tools in the tool belt. He's got great athleticism, good speed. Again, like Guillory, a physical player is not going to just get bullied outside on an island. And that's what you need. You need guys that are going to be able to hold their ground. They're going to make things difficult for opposing wide receivers, especially in the SEC, when that size is going to be pretty significant, and they're not going to back down at all. And again, I like what Brandon Hall and Jay Valai are building in the defensive backfield. I mean, they've really hit home runs each of the last few cycles, and I think 2025 is going to be another one. We can even go back to the 2022 recruiting class. We're starting to see that all come together. Robert Spears-Jennings is going to be a significant part of the defensive backfield. Jaden Rowe has turned a lot of heads this spring. Sometimes it just takes a few years to develop. And 2023, we're going to see big, time performances now out of a guy like Peyton Bowen. Jacoby Johnson's turned a bunch of heads. Makari Vickers is getting a lot of run as well. So that defensive back group that these guys have recruited, Jay Valai and Brandon Hall, they're doing a really, really good job. And I have no doubt that it's going to continue to look really, really good in 2025, especially if they end up landing a guy like Jonah Williams, the 5-star out of South Texas. So everything is turning up roses for me as far as Jay Valai and Brandon Hall recruiting wise.
Yeah, and a bunch of those on-campus names that you mentioned, the Makari Vickers and Peyton Bowens and on and on and on, and Robert Spears-Jennings, not to single anybody out or leave anybody out. We're talking about bona fide athletes. And Oklahoma's, look, had some good individual defensive backs over the last umpteen years, but the collection of defensive backs that it feels like Oklahoma has now. The bodies on bodies at corner and at safety is pretty exciting, and it continues in these recruiting classes. So yeah, Brandon Hall and Jay Valai are earning their keep for Oklahoma, and just the complexion, top to bottom, from the front to the back of this Oklahoma defense, the defensive line with Bates, with Chavis, what those guys are doing. Obviously, Brent Venables not going to have too many problems finding talented linebackers. It's a different world defensively where Oklahoma's starting to operate in. And look, that's, you know it, I know it, everybody knows it. This is what it's going to take for Oklahoma to go get accomplished what it wants to get accomplished in the SEC. Speaking of getting things accomplished, a number of Sooners saw their dreams come true in the way of the NFL draft and in the way of some undrafted free agent deals. We'll update you on that. Plus, for those that have been hitting the panic button for Oklahoma men's basketball, well, there's finally good news to report. The stock is rising the right direction, and Oklahoma women's basketball got a big-time addition out of the portal as well. Get you up to date on all of that next on Locked On Sooners.
All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete your albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day and constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot Panchico machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Big weekend for the Oklahoma Sooners, the NFL draft, men's hoops, women's hoops. Let's start with the draft. Always a highlight of the offseason because you get to, one, see Oklahoma Sooners fulfill their dreams in getting drafted, and your favorite NFL team adds players that might help them in the coming years. My favorite NFL team, the Dallas Cowboys, happened to add an Oklahoma Sooner in the first round of the NFL draft at 29 overall, drafting Tyler Guyton to be presumably their left tackle after allowing Tyron Smith, an all-pro left tackle who had been with the team since 2010 or 11, walk in free agency to the New York Jets. So, man, I'm pumped. I'm excited. I love Tyler Guyton. I think he's got all kinds of potential. He's just scratching the surface on what he can be for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I think his arrow is still pointing up after just one season as a starter. I mean, it was a really good season for him. And obviously he earned a first round grade, and hats off to him for the work that he put in to really learn the position in such a short time and be as productive and as good as he was at offensive tackle in the Oklahoma Sooners offense. Also hats off to Bill Beatonbow, who had his second offensive tackle drafted in a row in the first round after Anton Harrison went to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 2023 NFL draft.
Tyler Guyton, a $12.82 million contract, rookie contract with the fifth-year option, team option. Let's see, 6.143 in signing bonus money for Guyton. So that's great. The average annual value there, $3.2 million. And this, a projection, by the way, according to Spotrac. So don't take that and run away with it completely, but that is what Spotrac projects. What about Walter Rouse? Great to see that Walter Rouse was indeed drafted, pick number 177 overall, the first pick of the sixth round by the Minnesota Vikings. And he got himself some money, to $250,000 signing bonus, $254,285. If I can read, John, $254,285 signing bonus for Walter Rouse. And if he lasts the duration of the contract, it's an average annual value of $1.068 million, 4.2 the value of the contract for Walter Rouse. And last but not least, how about Jonah Laulu? We thought there was a chance for Jonah. There was sort of some late buzz, and he's got a $101,000 signing bonus. The contract over the duration would be $4.1 million for Jonah Laulu. So great to see him get drafted. And then you tell me, who do you like out of the undrafted free agents to potentially stick and wind up in a rostered situation? Great to see these Sooners sign as UDFAs, undrafted free agents. Drake Stoops to the Los Angeles Rams, McCade Mathieu to the Kansas City Chiefs, Andrew Rame to the Carolina Panthers, Isaiah Coe to the Indianapolis Colts, Rondell Bothroyd to the Buffalo Bills, and Austin Stogner to the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, obviously I like Drake Stoops to earn a roster spot with the Rams. He's a guy that's going to be able to contribute not only as a wide receiver, but on special teams as a punt returner, kick returner. But he's going to do a lot of the dirty work. He can play in the slot, and that's going to help Matthew Stafford and that Rams offense. He'll thrive actually under Sean McVay. I also really, really like Rondell Bothroyd's landing spot. I mean, it's not going to be necessarily easy for an undrafted free agent to stick. But, I mean, he had really, really good production at Wake Forest before coming to Oklahoma. And then McCade Mathieu, I joked on Twitter that Andy Reid said to his scouts, just go get me another one of them Bill Beatonbow offensive linemen. And that's what he did with McCade Mathieu. So anytime you're an offensive lineman, you're going to have a really, really good shot if you're able to show that you're capable of holding up, even if it's just a rotational backup in, interior offensive line role. Like, that is not a bad job. Like, it's not a finite, or there's not an infinite number of jobs in the NFL. And if you're a backup in the NFL, I mean, that's awesome. So for McCade Mathieu to go from, not really having much of an NFL future to playing one really, really good year with the Oklahoma Sooners and then finding a job with the Chiefs, I mean, that's huge, man. And he's going to have a chance. There's always a chance for offensive linemen to push through. And I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are a perfect example. They took Terrence Steele, who was an undrafted free agent, out of Texas Tech, and they turn him into a starting right tackle. So there's always a chance, man, if you're good enough.
Okay, as we shift gears to the basketball court, many have been understandably frustrated. 3 years with Porter Moser, a couple of near misses, but 3 years without an NCAA tournament berth. There's been defections, and you've seen Milos Uzan wind up somewhere else. Otega Owe, I think, surprised some people ending up in Kentucky, but he transferred out, wound up there. So it's been a let's totally rebuild the roster situation. And folks were panicked when Padula did not pick Oklahoma, right? In-state kid that went to Virginia Tech, had a nice start to his career, and wound up somewhere else other than Oklahoma. Well, now finally the dominoes are starting to fall. The latest name out of the transfer portal is Bryson Goodine, a transfer from Fairfield, can really shoot it from deep, John. He joins a couple of other recent additions. Dayton guard Kobe Elvis. Elvis has entered the building. He has not left the building. He has entered the building at Oklahoma. Long Beach State guard Jaden Jones, who I really like a lot. If I can pull this up, he is on a select list, John, of guys that, well, first of all, he's the defensive player of the year in the conference that he played in, but also the Big West defensive player of the year. But listen to this, okay? One of 9 players in NCAA basketball to record 60-plus steals, 30-plus blocks, and make 75 or more three-pointers in a single season since 92. Okay, and I get it. Some folks are going to say, well, wait a second. Long Beach State, not super excited about that. But you hear this list, and you might be a little more excited, okay? He joins names with that, such as Shane Battier, Kevin Durant, Danny Green, RJ Hunter, and Mikal Bridges, all names that were on that list. So I'm not going to sit here and totally sunshine pump and say mission accomplished with Jaden Jones and with Mr. Goodine. But I do think from, not the names alone of Fairfield and Long Beach State. I understand that for some that's not going to move the needle, but just based on what these guys are bringing to Oklahoma, I do think Oklahoma's found 2 guys, and we'll see about Mr. Elvis as well. But I think they've found 2 guys that can legitimately help them, John.
And they're going to need to, because you lost a lot of guard play in the portal this offseason. But, a guy like Javion McCollum, he was at Siena. a year ago and was a big time contributor for the Sooners this year. So that step up can be made, but you're going to need it. I mean, you need Jaden Jones to have a really good defensive season. You need Guyton to come in and be that 3-point shooter that he was down at the MAC, not the MAC, but the MAC. And you need Elvis to come in and provide that experience. These are all three guys with a lot of experience. They played a lot of college basketball. And if you can end up getting another big, then that's going to be huge too. But I like what it does. And it's the same thing we talk about in the transfer portal every offseason is you add guys that are going to help provide a safe floor for your roster, that are going to help give you a little bit of security. And then if a Forsyth comes in and he takes a job and he's your starting point guard or your starting two guard, well, hey, that's okay. You're just adding competition to make things a little bit more difficult and let the guys that are going to emerge. But unless you have that competition, you're not going to know. But at least you have veterans that have played a lot of college basketball that are going to give you a little bit of a security net as you try to make the NCAA tournament for the first time.
The women's basketball end of the equation, OU got a lot better. They've added Oregon State transfer Raegan Beers, who was one of the best players, period, in women's college basketball, but certainly out west in the Pac-12 was phenomenal. 6'4" big, space eater, but can score, can rebound. 17.5 points she averaged last season, 10.6 boards that she pulled down per game. So a double-double machine, John, and the top field goal percentage in all of America. 66.4% she shot from the field, a third-team AP All-American, two-time all-time, all Pac-12, selection. So this was one of the best players in the transfer portal in women's college basketball. In Oklahoma and Jennie Baranczyk, they went and won the recruitment and have added her to a talented roster that obviously wants to go win the Big 12 again, but also wants to advance past the first weekend of the tournament for the first time since 2013. And I think that they've found a piece that's going to help them do that, John. I think they're a second weekend tournament team as currently constructed now.
Yeah, they're a Sweet 16 team. I mean, Beers, she helped Oregon State get to the Elite Eight last year, and they ran into that South Carolina buzzsaw. She averaged 15 points per game, 8 boards per game. And against South Carolina, she had 16 and 8. And I mean, that's a tough South Carolina team to be able to put up 16 points on a good defensive basketball team like they are. That's huge, man. And so it's a huge addition. And the fact that Jennie Baranczyk was able to beat out UConn in this recruitment, I mean, Jennie from the block is pulling it together. And you talked about the talent. I mean, they've got so much coming back for this team next year. Lexi Keys and Peyton Verhulst and Sahara Williams and Skylar Van and Nevaeh Todd, like all the big time contributors are back, and you added in a third-team All-American, all Pac-12 player, freshman Pac-12 player of the year. This is a huge, huge, huge addition. I don't know what the equivalent would be on the men's side, but this is an absolutely big time addition by Jennie Baranczyk and her coaching staff, and they should be celebrating and should be pumped up, and all of Oklahoma fans should be pumped up as well. We got to fill up the link next year to get this team over the top and help them get to that next level in 2024, 2025.
And as I say, to go defend upon a Big 12 championship, of course, I meant to go unseat South Carolina in the SEC.
That's right. That's right. It's crazy, man. That next season is going to be wild because it's South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee. I mean, that is and you still have to play Texas. And I mean, it's going to be quite the story to watch this Oklahoma Sooners team go into the SEC next year. But man, they're loaded and ready to go. If they can continue to develop and build on what they did this past year, this could potentially be an Elite Eight, Sweet 16 type of team. We'll see, man. But Jennie Baranczyk continues to do great things, both on the floor and in the offseason, to help this team get better and better each year. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.